Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. My name is Amy Wilborn, and I'm delighted to serve as your worship associate today and welcome you fully into this space. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies here. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all you are bringing with you today and all your heart longs to set down. We extend a special welcome to each guest among us. We invite our guests to fill out a welcome card located in the pew rack in front of you and drop it in the offering plate later in the service. Guests may also pick up a welcome packet at the back of the sanctuary where folks will also find hearing assist devices and Braille hymnals. A fragrance-free area is located on the front right side in the first few pews. If you are a visiting family, including children or youth, after the time for all ages noted in the order of service, please join the children's recessional and head across the hall to the common room. There you will be greeted by someone who will orient you to religious education. Immediately following the service, everyone is invited for coffee and conversation in the common room. My name again is Amy Wilborn, and you can come talk to me at the guest table there. As a way to engage at First Church, I invite everyone to explore the announcements insert for the numerous opportunities available here. In particular, let me draw your attention to a few. Today's forum is titled National Democratic Convention and is presented by Jason Ray and Martha Love. Anticipate gathering with your extended family over Thanksgiving? Wonder how to explain your religion? Take the UU Elevator Speech class and be prepared. In this two-session class, you'll be guided to develop a short speech about Unitarian Universalism. Register at the RE table today or online by November 6th and join us on Sundays, November 10th and 17th at 12:15 to 1:15 p.m. in the parlor. Co-facilitators Eric Islo and John Gilo are excited to meet you. Today is the last day for the Feast for Funds silent auction. Stop in the Leanhouse Common Room to browse and bid. This is your church's largest fundraiser, and it needs everyone to support it to be a success. The bidding closes promptly at 1 p.m., and the drawing for raffle tickets takes place at 1:15. Please find details on these and more events in the announcements insert. Finally, please silence all electronic devices for the remainder of the service. Once again, I welcome you to First Church by inviting you to join me in the unison reading of our mission, which is printed in your order of service. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. And now I welcome Deborah Pine and Lucy Pine to light our chalice this morning.
These opening words are by poet Jane Hirshfield. Again, the wind flakes gold leaf from the trees, and the painting darkens, as if 1,000 penitents kissed an icon till it thinned back to bare wood without diminishment. Please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn 38, Morning Has Broken. Our theme for November is attention. And today we'll be talking about paying attention. There are many ways that we pay attention to one another in this beloved community. Today we'd like to lift up the ministry of pastoral care. When you happen to notice someone at church who looks lonely or sad and you reach out to them to say hello and stay to listen, you are giving care, participating in the caring ministry of our church. And if you are the one who receives that hello, how are you, and you are willing to share with someone how you're really doing, you are also participating in the care of our community. There are some special roles in pastoral care that we'd like to recognize today and thank people who are serving in this way. So I'll call people up who are in those different roles, and let's wait until everyone is all up here before we give them a big round of applause. We'll start with our pastoral care providers. These are the folks who provide short-term hands-on help to those who might appreciate a meal delivered to their home when they just get back from the hospital, or perhaps a ride to the doctor when they are recovering from an injury or surgery. Jane Dorweiler is serving as our pastoral care provider coordinator, so I'll ask Jane to come up. And to keep her company, anyone who is a pastoral care provider who gives those meals and rides, come on up and stand with Jane. There are a few of you, I know. This is a good time of year to sign up to participate in this ministry. If you are the kind of person who likes to give that hands-on help, there's a sign-up sheet at the member services table. We also offer church members our caring attention through our pastoral care associates. Katie's like, I don't know why I'm coming forward. You must be a pastoral care provider. So our 9 pastoral care associates completed a 20-hour training over a year ago, and they offer a compassionate and confidential listening presence to our church members who are going through difficult transitions, which can be anything from a chronic illness to divorce to death of a loved one. Jane Peterson serves as our PCA coordinator, and Lori Peterson, our lead trainer, so I'd ask those leaders to come forward, and our pastoral care associates who are currently serving. While they're coming up, I'll mention that if you are a member of our community and you would like a listening presence or you'd like some hands-on help, there is contact information in your order of service about how to get a hold of our coordinator, our coordinators. We also have a shawl ministry group that creates lovely shawls and lap robes and baby blankets as a way to express the love of our community to our church members, especially when they're not able to be here in person. Connie Jorgensen and Patty Agaki coordinate our shawl ministry group, so I'd invite them forward along with any of you who are creating these beautiful items behind the scenes. No shawl ministry people today? All right. Well, you can join their group next Sunday if you'd like to. And lastly, our memorial service reception team provides simple yet elegant food at a family's request after a memorial service for a reception. Our coordinators, Sharon Depew, Cecile Langford, and Judy Fons, would you please come forward, along with any of the folks who have helped out by providing food for those receptions. Well, let it be known that there are many other folks who are serving in this ministry who are not here today, but for those who are here, let's give them a warm round of applause. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for being here for one another. You can be seated. Our children's recessional hymn is called Let It Be a Dance. It's number 311. As we enter into a time of centering, I invite you to bring your attention to your body as you sit. Notice your feet on the floor. Bring your attention to your breathing. Let yourself settle down, settle in. And allow this spoken meditation by J.D. Bowlby to enter your thoughts. When blessed silence returns, I can listen to the butterflies that flutter inside my head. To hear them, one must be calm and pay close attention, for their wing beats are barely audible. Loud breathing is enough to drown them out. This is astonishing. My hearing does not improve, yet I hear them better and better. I must have butterfly hearing.
I discovered the poet Ross Gay this summer when hearing him interviewed for the podcast On Being. I was enamored with his keen, humorous, and childlike observation of the human experience. Shortly after, I purchased his book, The Book of Delights, which is a collection of essays from his practice of writing one essay a day for a year about something he is delighted by. I read one of his essays nightly before bed. It has become a practice of attention for me and has influenced what I pay attention to, big and small, in my own life. This has led to an abundance of delights, from my interactions with my students to the construction worker holding the door for another man at the gas station. These small kindnesses swell my heart and bolster my often weary spirit. I'd like to share one of Ross Gay's essays with you. It's titled The Sanctity of Trains. Something I've noticed riding on Amtrak trains, like the one I'm on right now between Syracuse and Manhattan, is that people leave their bags unattended for extended periods of time. Maybe they go to the end of the car to use the bathroom, or sometimes they go to the far end of the train to the cafe. My neighbor on this train, across the aisle and one row up, disappeared for a good 20 minutes, her bag wide open, a computer peeking out, not that I was checking. She is not unusual in this flaunting of security, otherwise known as trust, on the train. Nearly everyone participates in this practice of trust, and without recruiting a neighbor across the aisle to keep an eye on my stuff while I use the restroom, which seems to be a coffee shop phenomenon, trusting one's coffee shop neighbor, but not the people in line, etc. I suppose, given the snugness of the train, especially if it's full, one might speculate there's a kind of eyes on the streetness at play. Although it seemed to me this morning, when I was first leaving my valuables on the seat for pilfering, my laptop and cell phone glittering atop my sweatshirt and scarf, most everyone was sleeping, and so provided little, if any, eyewitness deterrent. I suppose I could spend some time theorizing how it is that people are not bad to each other, but that's not really the point. The point is that in almost every instance of our lives, our social lives, we are, if we pay attention, in the midst of an almost constant, if subtle, caretaking, holding open doors, offering elbows at crosswalks, letting someone else go first, helping with the heavy bags, reaching what's too high or what's been dropped, pulling someone back to their feet, stopping at the car wreck, at the struck dog, the alternating merge, also known as the zipper. This caretaking is our default mode, and it's always a lie that convinces us to act otherwise, always.
In a typical day, who and what do you pay attention to? At work, at home, doing volunteer service? Think about that for a moment. I imagine your list includes work projects, colleagues, family, friends, parenting, chores, animal companions, home maintenance, errands, the news, email, and social media. Who and what do you wish you could pay more attention to? Think about that for a moment. I don't know, your list might include more time with close friends, more time with your spouse or partner, more exercise, spiritual practice, perhaps reading a book, perhaps being outdoors. Maybe something surprising comes up in your mind. Maybe you want to pay more attention to learning a new skill, doing something creative you've never tried before, reaching out to a long-lost friend, taking a stand on a justice issue that you've hesitated to approach. What would it take to do that? To pay more attention to what and who you really wanted to? If we think of our attention as a currency, it might help us to reclaim it and spend it more often where we really want to. We are used to thinking about how we spend our money, perhaps not so much how we spend our time and attention. Perhaps if we think of paying attention as investing, we can be more intentional and effective about moving our attention from one account to another. For example, perhaps there are times when we would like to move our attention away from work and into family, or move our attention away from the news and into a spiritual practice, or move our attention away from social media and into a device-free encounter with nature or another human being. On any given day, we could ask ourselves, which account are we paying our attention into? Which account are we spending down? In couples therapy, partners are often taught about how to build up their positive emotional bank account with one another. By giving each other positive communication and actions, the emotional bank account of their relationship grows. If they give each other negative communication and actions, their emotional bank account goes down. The ratio of positive to negative is significant and can make or break a marriage. One harmful word or action can deplete an emotional bank account so far that it takes months to build it back up with intentional, positive interactions. During our Worship Associate Retreat, where we brainstorm and reflect on the monthly themes for worship, someone said, "Attention is our most valuable currency." If this is true, it behooves us to reflect upon how we spend our attention and how we make choices, and when possible, shape our lives and world with those choices into what we want them to be. Barbara Brown Taylor wrote in her book, An Altar in the World, "Paying attention requires no equipment, no special clothes, greens, fees, or personal trainers. You do not even have to be in particularly good shape. All you need is a body on this earth willing to notice where it is. How liberating. We do not have to have money or be good at meditation to notice where we are on earth and open our senses. Once we open ourselves by paying attention, then we become rich with possibility. Sounds simple, but considering the world we live in, it's not. Reclaiming our attention is an uphill battle. The attention merchants are constantly distracting us and getting inside our heads. Tim Wu writes in his book, Attention Merchants, since the rise of capitalism, it has been known that capturing someone's attention could cause them to part with some money. He defines attention merchant as an industrial scale harvester of human attention, or a firm whose business model is the mass capture of attention for resale to advertisers. Who exactly are the attention merchants, he asks? Their lineage can be traced to the 19th century, when in New York City, the first newspapers fully dependent on advertising were created. And in Paris, where a dazzling new kind of commercial art poster first seized the eyes of the person in the street. Wu traces the history of attention merchants by identifying a sequence of 4 major screens that entered society, grabbing people's attention in powerful ways. The first screen was the movies, the moving picture screen, in the late 1800s, which brought people together in a kind of magical experience that intensified their emotions. A neuroscientist might say, he wrote, that cinema had always shown the ability to activate our mirror neurons, the brain cells known to light up identically, whether we observe someone perform an act or do it ourselves. It happens too when an image is close enough to reality to make our brain identify with what it sees. The second screen to enter people's lives was the television. Wu writes, the migration of the screen into the home of every family was an event of unparalleled significance in the history of the attention industries and their influence over people's lives. Early models of television were expensive, but from a mere 9% of homes in 1950, 72% of homes had TV by 1956. Television immediately began to devour time, nearly 5 hours a day for the average person by 1960. But after just half a decade, the second half of that decade of people having to watch commercial breaks in their TV programs, resistance to the attention merchants was brewing. In the late 1950s, Zenith engineers invented the remote control. Hallelujah. Wu writes, the real significance of the remote control was in arming a new popular resistance against the industrialized harvest of attention. What was a rising demand for a way to defend oneself against what had become such easy access to the mind. It was a desire to take back control over one's attention. Well, the third screen to enter people's lives, you may guess, was the personal computer in the 1990s, and along with it, the internet and the email. Anyone with a personal computer and an email account was suddenly subject to a new, addictive attentional habit called the check-in. As Wu describes, the impulse triggered by the intrusive thought that whatever else one is doing, I need to check my email. I just need to check it. The check-in would go on to power AOL, Facebook, Twitter, and various other future attention merchants. No other has compelled so many minds with such regularity that has the feel of a compulsion, a mental itch constantly in need of scratching. Like B.F. Skinner's theory of operant conditioning, we are like the pigeon in his experiment, who was conditioned to peck a button in order to be fed a little snack. We've all experienced how the internet and email devours our attention, but the fourth screen to enter our lives brought it to a whole new level. And what was the fourth screen introduced in the late 1990s? The smartphone. Wu dubs the smartphone the mirror of Narcissus. We have become attached to our smartphones, and they are attached to us. Wu writes, technologies like the smartphone are not merely extensions, but technological prosthetics, which, by virtue of being constantly attached to us or present on our bodies, become a part of us. Whether called a phone or a watch, the fact remains that wearables take that check-in habit begun with email and turn it into something akin to a bodily function. Well, with clickbait and electronic advertising and a constantly accessible handheld device, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole, and without noticing, we give our attention away, seemingly without choosing to. The attention merchants harvest our attention as a commodity and then resell it to advertisers, who in turn influence our consciousness in ways that we are not aware that we consented to. The constant access to us and the collecting of our personal data is overwhelming. An article in the New York Times business section last Monday said, advertising agencies are better informed than ever before about consumers, having amassed huge stores of their data. But many of those consumers, especially the affluent young people prized by advertisers, hate ads so much that they are paying to avoid them. As an example, when Apple released ad blockers in 2015, overnight it became the most popular app. Why? Like the remote control, we are trying again to take charge of our attention. Wu writes, as adults, we are hardly ever unreachable, seldom away from a screen of some kind, rarely not being solicited or sold to. Since its inception a century ago, the attention industry in its many forms has asked and gained more and more of our waking moments, albeit always in exchange for new conveniences and diversions, creating a grand bargain that has transformed our lives. In the process, as a society and individually, we have accepted a life experience that is, in all of its dimensions, economic, political, social, any way you can think of, mediated as never before in human history. So it's not that these devices or these screens are bad or good in and of themselves. It's how we use them and how they take over our attention. Personally, I'm a late adopter of any new technology, a combination of my slow learning curve with any kind of technology and a resistance to have yet another way that my attention is taken. So Wu asserts that the most pressing question in our times is not how the attention merchant should conduct business, But where and when? Our society has been woefully negligent about what in other contexts we would call zoning. The rules of zoning, the regulation of commercial activity where we live. He asks, how do we value what used to be called our private lives? Do we draw any line between the private and the commercial? What times and spaces should we consider as too valuable, personal, or sacrosanct? How do we reclaim ownership of the attention that is our own, the very experience of living? I believe that part of what underlies our addiction to the stimuli of the fourth screen is a fear of being alone. Another article in the New York Times business section last Monday reported our aversion to being alone can be quite drastic. A quarter of the women and 2/3 of the men in a University of Virginia study chose to subject themselves to an electric shock rather than do nothing and spend time alone with their thoughts. Tweevy Wynn, an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology at Durham University, who studies solitude, said it's not that solitude is always good, but it can be. We have some evidence to show that valuing solitude doesn't really hurt your social life. In fact, it might improve it. Because solitude helps us regulate our emotions, it can have a calming effect that helps us better relate to others. The key comes from choosing to spend time alone. Many of us who've made a commitment to try a spiritual practice, such as yoga, meditating, walking without earbuds, memorizing poetry, inevitably at some point we experience resistance inside. What will we discover when we turn aside from all distractions? What will happen when we are alone, just us and the silence? What challenging emotions might arrive, like grief or fear? Barbara Brown Taylor wrote, I knew a woman once who was not sure she wanted to go on living. She was old, she lived alone. She was afraid to go to sleep at night for fear that she would not wake up in the morning. So she lay in her bed waiting for the sun to come up before she closed her eyes. Then someone who loved her suggested that as long as she was awake, she might as well start listening for the first bird that began to sing each morning. Before long, the sound of that bird became the bell that woke her heart to life again. She named the bird. She discovered what such birds like to eat and put feeders full of seed in her yard. Other birds came. She learned their names as well. She began to collect birdhouses, which she hung from the rafters of her porch, until she became the mayor of an entire bird village. She still does not sleep well, but she is no longer afraid of her life. So there are barriers to seeking an unmediated experience of life. Barriers inside us, like our reluctance to face our own grief and fear. And there's also our fear of the pain outside of us, the pain in the world, the suffering of others. Taylor told another story. She wrote, Simone Weil was a French Jew who died of hunger in World War II. But she did not have to die of hunger. Her family was wealthy, she was extremely well educated, and she never fell into the clutches of the Nazis. She remained so affected by what was happening to other, less protected people under the Third Reich that she decided to live as they lived. She worked in factories when she could have been teaching in schools. She lived on tinned rations when she could have been eating fresh eggs cooked in butter. Although she grew up a secular Jew, she was drawn so strongly to the sacramental life of the Christian church that her desire for baptism became almost overwhelming to her. Yet, she declined to be baptized, saying that she could not seek her own soul's safety in any church that denied salvation to those who were not in it. This meant that she spent the rest of her short life regarding the bread and wine of Holy Communion without ever eating them. Regarding them was enough for her, even as they strengthened her resolve to stay hungry with those who were hungry. Her resolve to remain outside the safety of the church with those who were outside. Vail died in an English sanatorium in 1943 at the age of 34. The way that she paid attention to the suffering of others caused her to make some extreme choices. Her deep experience of the world came at a high cost. But we, who may shy away from seeking deep experience of the world, are also paying a cost. American philosopher William James wrote, "When we reach the end of our days, our life experience will equal what we have paid attention to." So I'll end by asking the questions at the beginning. On a typical day, who and what do you pay attention to? Who and what do you wish you could pay attention to? What would it take to do that? And how do you want to spend your most valuable currency, your attention? Please rise in body or spirit for the responsive reading by Annie Dillard, printed in your order of service. I'll begin. At a certain point, you say to the woods, to the sea, to the mountains, the world, you empty yourself and wait, listening. You feel the world's word as a tension, a hum, a single chorused note everywhere the same.
This is it. This comes the silence of all words.
It is the Alpha and the Omega. It is God's brooding over the face of the waters.
It is the blended note of 10,000 things, the wine of wings.
You take a step in the right direction to pray to this silence. Let's join in singing our closing